What's up, Diablo 4 Barbarians? So let's talk about Upheaval in Season 4. Why would you want to play it? Well, with the Masterworking ability, you are going to be able to Masterwork the HellHammer, and you can get an insane amount of bonus stats. Even though right here you're seeing it say 8 out of 12, you might be wondering, where is the blue or the yellow number? Well, if you get plus to ranks in the skill, which is in this case Upheaval, it doesn't actually show up in the item when you mouse over it. Keep in mind, everything is from the PTR. I didn't have max gear, and maybe that number will actually change. It'll actually be correct. In this instance, it would have been actually yellow. And you can actually masterwork unique items a lot easier, and that is because, one, you can trade unique, so it's going to be easier to acquire, but on top of that, there is less stats for the thing to actually roll. So let's go over first off what has changed and why you may want to play Upheaval in Season 4, and what the actual build guide is going to be for this if you do want to play it. So starting right off, the Masterworking gives you ranks to Upheaval. That is massive. You're also going to be seeing the gameplay in the background, and the burning damage that you deal in the unique special power, that is essentially going to be scaling. So how it works in Diablo 4 for Season 4 is all the special aspects as well as unique powers that have some sort of thing that kind of happen, whether it's shooting out grenades or activating these little arrow storms if you're playing rogue. All of that is essentially going to be scaling much better. So you'll see sometimes where this burn damage can tick for so much, it will just one-shot anything that just walks over it. That thing that lingers on the ground is going to be essentially buffed. Now, we're not going to be using that for our main sorcerer damage. Our main sorcerer damage is just Upheaval, just hitting enemies. But what that does allow is any of the small trash monsters, especially in open world content, you go ahead and throw down one of the Upheavals, and if there's monsters that spawn in or walk by, they just get one-shotted by the ground, which is excellent. So it kind of helps out with clear speed, and it's just really satisfying to see you activate, you walk away, and people just follow you and they just die. It's cool. So I like it for those reasons. But on top of that, again, you get bonuses to Upheaval ranks. To kind of explain how this works is every 5% is added when you put in one skill point. In 99% of the cases with Diablo 4, one extra point into it is adding 5% of the base damage. That's not multiplicative, that's not additive, that's the base number that everything scales off of. That's even better than pretty much most of the damages in the game that you would get. So that's why it's so good. And remember, it's going to be easier to acquire 925 pieces of gear, and on top of that, we have the greater affixes. So if this was to be greater affix, and you go ahead and masterwork it and hit all 3 times on the ranks to Upheaval, you would have plus 10, which is essentially 50% bonus damage. Now, some people may think, oh man, that's super hard to get. It's actually not going to be difficult at all. All you need is a greater affix on HellHammer on Upheaval, and you could trade the items now. And another thing is, if it is a unique item, your chances are basically 1 out of 4 instead of 1 out of 5, and on top of that, because you can just get uniques via trade, it's going to be easier to acquire, and so you're going to be able to get more ranks to Upheaval, which essentially means more damage. Basically, I think it's a 12.5. It's a 2 probability calculator on, again, you'd have to activate it twice because the first one over here is going to be really easy. You just keep on resetting if you don't hit it, and that's a 1 in 4 chance. And then if we just talk about just hitting the last 2, because these have to be, again, probability, and it has to be in a row, then you would then have to actually hit that twice in a row, which again, I believe it's like 12.5 if you do the probability calculator on that. So it's really not unrealistic. And again, remember, this is not tempering, so you can keep on masterworking the item again and again. It's not like you have one chance and then it's over or anything like that. With tempering, you do have that system where you basically have only 5 temperings and then that's it. So that's essentially what you're going to try to hit if you want to min-max on this build. Even for just open world content, you don't have to have a massive amount of ranks to Upheaval. I didn't have perfect pieces of gear. I think mine was this exact one in the gameplay where we had plus 7 ranks to the skill, and you can go again much higher, and I wasn't really fully scaled into this. I didn't get an insane amount of overpower, but I'm going to go ahead and mention actually what has changed. They did mention in the patch notes one of the aspects did get changed in terms of its text, which is the sundered ground. They just changed the word on it. It didn't actually change the effectiveness on it. It just, that was noted in the patch notes. I figured I would go ahead and mention it. So I want to go ahead and mention kind of at the start of this video what essentially has changed with this build, and that's, again, you just get giant AoE on the ground, and you can increase with the tempering the size. I don't have any increased size here, I believe, in the gameplay. You can increase the size to be way bigger, and that's going to add, of course, more clear speed. So that's the main stuff that's actually going to be changed. So more damage and more AoE. That's what we're getting with Upheaval if you're interested in playing it. Now the question is Upheaval better than the Dust Devil Barbarian? No. I already have those guides, and I've already made a tier list for the next season. If you guys want to check that out, I'll link it down below. I consider Bash Barbarian to be one of the best, and then any variant of the Dust Devil. If you want to play Whirlwind, or if you want to play the Double Swing Barbarian, I already have 2 guides on both of those. The Hoda Barb as well as Upheaval, it's more so if you are tired of the meta, or you just, this is your favorite skill, you want to play with it, maybe you're bored of playing whatever you've built. Sometimes I get bored of playing the same build again and again. I played Twisting Blades Rogue for so many seasons that I just want to play something else, even if Twisting Blades is maybe the best build. I like to try out other things, so that's where this build is going to be for you. If you're just interested in playing a kind of a different build, but I'm going to say objectively it's going to be not nearly as good, but there comes to a point where, like, if it's open world content and you could just swap to it and you have fun with it, hey, you're still going to be pretty much just as fast as most of the Barbarian builds, unless you consider some sort of like Tyrell's Might uber unique with the Whirlwind, because that can absolutely delete the entire game for open world content. So now that that's out of the way, let's go over the build if you do want to go ahead and try it. And again, I'll link the other builds if you want to check those out, as I would consider those more of the meta. So starting right off, let's go over the skills. So for starters, we got Iron Skin. This skill is optional. You can play Iron Skin, you can play Charge, you can play Leap, you can play Ground Stomp, whatever you want to play for this slot here. And then we got Upheaval, and then we've got Triple Shouts, and then Wrath of Berserker, because it's in every single Barbarian build, and unless they really do something where they just remove these skills out of the game, no one's going to really play anything else. These are just like simply just too good. And then we have the Two-Handed Axe Expertise. This is going to add extra damage for us. And then for the aspects, we're really looking at getting Numbing Wraith. We can also get Relentless Berserker's aspect. You actually can have 100% uptime on Berserking in this build, which is really awesome, but it does have that ability to just kind of extend it if you're walking from pack 1 to pack 2, or if you have to climb something or move across something. It just keeps your Upheaval's Berserking duration, because you're going to get it from Upheaval versus Bleed in most circumstances, and yeah, it just keeps it up most of the time. And then we're looking at Edge Masters. Ideally, what you want to try to roll is to get a chance to restore primary resource on your hit. You still want to spend a lot of resource, because we're going to be wanting to run Banished Lord's Talisman. Again, in the gameplay, we don't have everything perfectly rolled, but there's a lot of stuff that you can get, like in your chest and your helmet, as well as your boots. You can get Fury per second, and that's going to help out a lot with your resource. So Edge Master is great, and then Concussive Strike's just for extra damage, or whatever you want to run for some extra utility. You can get some damage reduction as well in the pants. You can even run to Bolts if you want to. And then we are running the Aspect of Slaughter. Just I like it for running for extra movement speed in town, but you can swap something else if you want to. HellHammer, most important thing for the build. If you don't have this, I would not play the build, because then that defeats the purpose of running an Upheaval build. I try not to include any uniques or uber uniques in like build guides, but for the most part, this one, you're going to need this one, and I would highly recommend Banished Lord's Talisman, but it is technically playable without it. And then we have Limitless Rage over here, which is excellent. Just more damage here. And then we're running Banished Lord's Talisman, and this is actually getting changed in the next season. So instead of 300, it's 275. So basically, every fourth skill that you activate, it's going to be proc in it, because it's going to be 80 resource a piece. Don't get resource cost reduction on your pieces of gear. That is one thing that, like, normally in build guides they'll tell you to get, but in this one you don't want it, because you want it to spend more resource so you get more overpowers. And then we have the Blood Boiling Aspect, so every 20 seconds you get an overpower, and then also it has this thing where your core skill overpowers. You're going to get these little blood drops over here, but for the most part, we're just really using it for every 20 seconds, you get overpower. Bold Chieftains, just like in every Barbarian build, and then we're getting the Aspect of Sundered Ground, so every 25 seconds we get more overpower and we get more damage, and the timer is reduced when we have Upheaval overpower a boss or an elite. And then we have the Accelerating Aspect over here, which makes it so you have extra attack speed, because you want to attack as fast as possible, so you can build up to get that overpower. And then because it's overpower, well, you want to run rubies instead of emeralds, but you can run emeralds. It's not that big of a deal if you want to. And then extra rubies, and then any resistance types that you may need over here. Now, as far as the skill tree, there's not really anything too special with this that has changed. You just 2 points into anything. And then we're running Upheaval. So if you want more damage, you can technically run Furious, and you can run other skills like Charge and Leap to get other sources, or just run anything that you want to. There's another build where you can do Whirlwind and then you pop this, but I feel like most people don't like to play the weapon swap sort of things, and I totally get that. So I just like Violent Upheaval. So if Upheaval damages 2 enemies or a boss, you just gain Berserking. So it's super, super awesome. So you are 100% uptime on your Berserking, which is excellent for Barbarian. It's like a big source of extra bonus stats. And then, of course, just like your 1-point wonder of Iron Skin or Leap or Ground Stomp, whatever you want to put in. But I like Rallying Cry, and then get Challenging Shout, War Cry over here. Didn't really put another point into the Challenging Shot, just like the one where you get extra life here, and that is because we're going to get extra damage down here as well. So there's another thing over here where we get some extra life, and then just some more consistency with damage. There's also like the bleed effects can slow. We can apply it with thorns as well. There's like a node where your thorns can apply bleed if you just get like 1 thorn on something, or you can get thorns via your skill tree, and then you can have that apply it if you want to, because that can apply the slow to the enemies, or you can run the 2-handed sword expertise. This one though is optional if you want to. Normally a lot of Barbarian builds will have some sort of bleed because they need to slow, and then it's affected by our crowd control. And then on top of that, you can get any other bonuses, like you get your Berserking when you kill a bleeding enemy. So this one over here is kind of optional for this build because your Berserking is pretty much just given to us with Violent Upheaval, which is awesome. And then over here on the bottom, we're going to get Heavy-Handed, Wallop, just extra sources of damage over here. This one gives you more damage if they're stunned, and I'll go over that in a second. You can actually apply stun as well, but this is kind of nice to get. And technically this one's optional though. If you want to, you can get the bludgeoning weapons, have a chance to stun enemies, which can be okay as well. But we're going to get stunned in another way, but you can put points in this if you want to. And then we have the Wrath of Berserker, and then just like every single build, Unbridled Rage. Barbarian, hasn't really changed too much in the last few seasons as far as what we're getting, because, well, it's just like these are the best, and that's kind of what people run. So as far as what we're kind of looking for, there's not anything in particular other than the standard, like, you want to get crit, you want to get bonus ranks to upheaval, you want attack speed, crit strike chance where you can get it. I'll mouse over these real quick, and I'll leave the build website down below so you guys can kind of see it. But obviously getting damage while berserking, and then for our tempering, we want to get upheaval size. That could help out a little bit, but if you want to get something else, it's not the end of the world, because it already has pretty decent AoE clear. And then, of course, Banner Sword's Talisman, which already has crit strike chance on it, which is excellent, because, well, it's a new stat that can roll in the amulet, and a lot of builds normally want to have crit in the amulet because it's a very nice stat to have. And then as far as the Paragon board over here, we're going to be starting off on our starter board. We're going to get Exploit, and then we're running into Blood, Rage, and Wrath, and then we're going to go into Carnage / Ire, and then we are going to go over here into Warbringer / Territorial, and then for our fifth one, I don't know what it says for, but we have to path this way. So this one over here, Decimator, is going to be the 5th board. And then we're going to have this as our 6th board, which is Bone Breaker, because this one is so far away from the glyph socket. That's why we just basically tag and get the Bone Breaker, which will guarantee us overpower every 12 seconds. So to go over this is kind of important to kind of note for how much overpower sources we have, because that's where we get to do a big boy damage. And this is essentially going to be mainly for bosses, but it's nothing that you have to kind of manage here. It's not like the rogue build where, like, okay, you got to make sure you activate all these steps to one shot. You just keep on spamming your upheaval until things die. So here's our overpower sources. We have every 25 seconds with the aspect of Sunder Ground, and then its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds every single time we go ahead and overpower a boss or elite. And then we've got the Blood Boil aspect. We got 12 seconds with Bone Breaker, and then every 30 seconds with Dominate, and then every 275 resource spent. That means after every 3.4 upheavals is where we get it, and then we have like a natural chance for the overpower to activate. It's either like 3 or 5% for it. But that's going to go and wrap up Upheaval as far as it goes in the next season. If you guys are interested in playing it, that's kind of the build that I think most people will want to play. Now, of course, if you want to run the Grandfather or the Ring of the Starless Skies, or even Doombringer, and you can actually reduce your life via like a lot of the Paragon nodes, I got a couple like life and damage reduction. You can run Doombringer instead and scale to get even more damage, but I try not to include Uber-Uniques in any like build guides for the most part, but we may update it later if it's a lot easier to get Uber-Uniques in the next season. I think more people will be inclined to be a little bit more okay with seeing uber uniques in build guides, because every single time I add uber unique, people are like, dang dude, it requires uber unique, I can't build it. And that's not the case. Don't worry about this build requiring uber uniques. There's very few builds I think that would even want uber uniques, with the exception of maybe like Harlequin Crest, but Grandfather is still like just absolutely crazy good. But that's gonna be it, guys. That's the Upheaval Barbarian in season 4. I'm curious to know, after watching this, what do you plan to play if you are a Barbarian player? For me, I would 100% start out with the Dust Devils as far as the Double Swing Barbarian, because I think that one's objectively the best. And if I get bored, I might play this, or if I get the brand new Tyrael's armor, the Whirlwind Barbarian with that thing just shooting out constantly in a giant like AoE is going to be pretty fun as well. But that's going to wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it, and the build will be linked down below, as well as with the Dust Devil build, because I actually recommend that, especially for starting out, because it's part of like the free aspects that you get in season 4. But take care, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Check the pin for all of the links. Peace out.